There's a lot of benefits that can come from prolonged fasting or intermittent fasting, and I'm a fan of fasting. I use fasting myself. I use fasting with some of my clients. I certainly don't use it with all of my clients because with some people, even intermittent fasting can create more harm than good. And we'll put a link in the description below for our video on who should not use intermittent fasting if you want to check that out. But in this video, I'm going to help you understand that if a person is dealing with either gallstones or gallbladder sludge or poor bile flow issues, that prolonged fasting can equate to kind of smashing yourself in the face with a brick. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So to understand some of the problems that can come from prolonged fasting, we need to understand what happens when we digest food. So when we eat food, our stomach makes hydrochloric acid, or HCl. And this HCl is made to help us acidify our food so that we can start breaking down that food so that we can access the nutrients in that food. And then once that food is acidified, it will leave the stomach and go here into the duodenum, which is like the first 10 inches of the small intestine. And that's when the gallbladder will squirt this alkaline bile down onto that acidic product that left the stomach. And when you have an acidic product and an opposite pH of an alkaline bile product, and when they hit, it creates this sizzle. And that sizzle is what helps us really bust the food apart and get all of the nutrients and all of the value out of that food. And that's why we eat food. We don't eat food because it looked delicious on last night's episode of Contestants Get Yelled At in a Kitchen. I don't know what the name of those shows are. But we eat food so that we can get the nutrients out of that food. So once we acidify that food in the stomach, and it comes down here and we neutralize those acids with alkaline bile, now we're really digesting our food. Now there's bicarb that comes out of the pancreas that helps us neutralize those acids a little bit, but the alkaline bile is really crucial to creating that sizzle and helping us bust the food apart. So here's what's going on when we really look at what's happening. We need to understand the gallbladder's job. So the gallbladder's job is to take the bile that was made by the liver and then it stores it in the gallbladder and it concentrates that bile so that a small amount of bile can be more effective. That's the gallbladder's job. So when we're sending this acidic food out of the stomach down here, that's what's triggering the gallbladder to squirt that alkaline bile down so that we can neutralize those acids. Now if we're eating dietary fats, that can also signal the gallbladder saying, oh man, this bile is made to emulsify or break down our dietary fats so the body can benefit from those fats. So we use bile to do that. So when we're eating dietary fats, the gallbladder will also say, hey, I should do my job. I'm going to squirt this bile down there to help us emulsify those fats. Otherwise, when the fats don't get broken down, they become rancid and toxic, and now they're a problem that the body has to deal with. So this bile is a really big deal because when this liver is producing the bile, it filters out all this junk and toxins from the body and it puts a lot of that into our bile. So then when the bile comes down and goes through the intestinal tract, it's carrying those toxins with it and then it goes out the back door when we poop like a champion. So this bile pathway is like the main detox pathway for the whole body. So here's the problem when we come to fasting for an extended period of time. And for people that are really in a bad way, even fasting for a small amount of time can create problems. Because when there's no food coming in, hey, I'm fasting. All the cool kids are fasting, so I'm just not going to eat until we get to, next weekend. So when there's no food coming in there, there's nothing getting acidified. So it's this acid food coming into the duodenum that triggers the gallbladder to squirt that alkaline bile down there. It's dietary fats coming in through the stomach that triggers that gallbladder to squirt the alkaline bile down there. So if it's not getting triggered, then the bile is staying in the gallbladder. Well, remember what the gallbladder's job is? It's to concentrate that bile. And the gallbladder doesn't have an off switch. It doesn't have a, hey, I don't feel like concentrating right now. It just continues to concentrate. So when bile is not flowing the way that it should, it continues to concentrate until it concentrates into sludge or it can concentrate into stones. So we really want this bile to flow so that everything is moving in the right direction. There's a lot of things in our life today that can cause bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, even when we're not fasting. So we'll put a link in the description below for 10 things that cause bile to become too thick to flow correctly. You can check that out to see if you're doing any of those things that could be problematic. But just for fun, let's make the situation a little bit worse. Something that happens when we're fasting is that we're stressing the body, and in some ways that can be very beneficial. It's nice to stress the body out to help it figure out ways to operate better. But for a lot of people whose body is already in a stress state because maybe they don't have the resources the body needs to function correctly, maybe they're dealing with some type of overgrowth or some type of infection that's stressing the body out. When the body gets too stressed, it will raise stress hormones. Well, stress hormones like estrogen really have the ability to thicken up the bile even more so that it won't flow correctly. So now we have a scenario where we're not eating any food, so bile is not getting called on, so it continues to stay there and concentrate and thicken up. And we're raising stress hormones that can thicken that bile even more. So you can see that if somebody has gallstones already, that's from bile not flowing correctly. So you can see that prolonged fasting is really going to make that situation a whole lot worse. Even if they just have gallbladder sludge or poor bile flow, they can really magnify this situation by doing this prolonged fasting. So they're trying to do what all the cool kids are doing because they hear about all these great results, but the reality is they finish this fast and now their bile is flowing even worse. So now it might not come down here at all when we eat food. Now when this acidic product comes down here, the gallbladder might not be able to squirt the bile down because it's too thick and sticky to move correctly. Now we can't create that sizzle so that we can get the nutrients out of the food that we're eating. Now we can't emulsify our fats, and now our main detox pathway isn't working at all. And now all these toxins are accumulating and the body's like, what am I going to do with these? Oh, I'll shove them in fat cells, and now our fat cells expand and our pants don't fit, and oops, that 4 days of not eating really didn't benefit me at all. So when you can see all the problems that it can create for the wrong person, they're significant. Now, if you're looking for a reason to go ahead and do prolonged fasting, even if you do have poor bile flow, well, let's just jump over to this next page. And, oh, there's nothing on the next page because there's no reason to do something that's not right for your body. You shouldn't do what the Joneses are doing just so that you can be cool when it's going to make your situation worse. Let's go back to the page that has actual stuff on it. Because if you have these stones or you create these stones and one gets stuck in one of these biliary ducts and you have a gallbladder attack, if you need to understand gallbladder attacks, we'll put a link in the description below for our video on why gallbladder attacks happen. But if you ever had a gallbladder attack, you know that you kind of really would rather smash yourself in the face with a brick than have a gallbladder attack. It's a really bad thing, but even beyond the fear of having a gallbladder attack, you can see that you really want bile flowing correctly for the body to function the way that it wants to function. So what we want to do is if you really want to use prolonged fasting, you want to set your body up so that you can be successful with that prolonged fasting. So you want to take steps to thin the bile out so that it's flowing correctly. And if you go a prolonged period of time without eating where you know this bile is going to become a little more thick, it's going to become a little more sticky, then you've already taken steps to thin it out so that that's not going to be this huge problem. If you have gallstones or if you have gallbladder sludge, you really got to fix that before you're really going to get benefits from any type of fasting, even intermittent fasting, because anything where you're allowing that to concentrate longer is going to be a problem. So what I want you to do right now is jump over and watch our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow so you know the steps you can take to kind of get that bile flowing better before you start using prolonged fasting. I can't wait to hear about your results.